Admiral Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the stars through the main view screen. The massive human battleship moved slowly through space near the edge of known territory. Jake had been commanding ships for 20 years, but this patrol felt different somehow. His gray hair showed his experience, and his calm blue eyes missed nothing that happened on his bridge. Navigator Lisa Murphy checked her instruments and frowned. She was young but very good at her job. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she always kept her station perfectly organized. Lisa had joined the fleet 5 years ago and quickly earned respect for her sharp mind and steady hands during dangerous navigation missions. Chief Engineer Carlos Rivera worked at his station monitoring the ship's power systems. Carlos was a big man with strong hands and a quiet voice. He knew every part of the Liberty better than anyone else. When something broke, Carlos could fix it. When something needed improvement, Carlos found a way. The crew trusted him completely because Carlos had never let them down. Communications Officer Amy Foster sat at her post listening to the quiet hum of space traffic. Amy was small and quick with bright green eyes that seemed to see everything at once. She could speak 6 different languages and had a gift for understanding alien communications even when the translators failed. Amy kept the Liberty connected to the rest of the human fleet across many light years of empty space. The Liberty was one of 12 human battleships patrolling this sector. Each ship carried 300 crew members and enough weapons to fight a small war. The humans had built these ships after first contact with alien traders 10 years ago. Nobody knew what else might be out there in the dark spaces between stars. The fleet kept Earth and the human colonies safe from unknown threats. Jake walked over to Lisa's station and looked at her navigation display. The star maps showed their current position at the very edge of explored space. Beyond this point lay the great unknown where no human ship had ever traveled. The Admiralty back on Earth preferred caution when it came to unknown regions, but Jake had always been curious about what lay beyond the frontier. "Any unusual readings today, Lisa?" Jake asked quietly. Lisa shook her head and pointed at her screens. "Everything looks normal, Admiral. Standard background radiation and normal stellar activity from the nearby systems. No ships or artificial signals detected anywhere in scanning range." Carlos looked up from his engineering station and joined the conversation. "The Liberty is running perfectly, sir. All systems are operating at peak efficiency. We could push deeper into unknown space if needed without any problems." Amy turned in her chair and added her own report. "Long-range communications are clear, Admiral. No distress signals or unusual transmissions from any direction. The other patrol ships are all reporting normal status as well." Jake nodded and walked back to his command chair. The Liberty had been on patrol for 3 weeks without seeing anything more exciting than a few asteroids and some background cosmic radiation. The crew was getting restless, and Jake understood their feelings. Young people joined the fleet to explore strange new worlds and meet alien civilizations, but most patrol missions involved nothing but empty space and routine maintenance. Suddenly, Lisa's console began beeping urgently. She leaned forward and studied her displays with growing excitement. "Admiral, I'm picking up massive energy signatures from the Delta 7 system. The readings are off the scale, sir. Whatever is generating this energy is huge." Jake moved quickly to her station and studied the data himself. The energy readings were unlike anything in the human database. No natural phenomenon could create such massive and organized energy patterns. Something artificial and very large was operating in the Delta 7 system. "How far away is the source?" Jake asked. "Approximately 6 light hours from our current position, sir. The energy signatures are so strong that our sensors can detect them even at this distance. I estimate at least 1,000 separate sources all clustered together in space near the 4th planet." Carlos whistled softly. 1,000 energy sources, Admiral. That would require a fleet of massive ships or some kind of enormous space station. Nothing that big appears in any of our databases." Amy checked her communications equipment and reported back to Jake. "No transmissions detected from the Delta 7 system, sir. If there are ships or stations there, they are maintaining complete radio silence." Jake considered his options carefully. Standard fleet protocol required reporting all unusual discoveries to Earth Command before investigating. However, the nearest communications relay would take 4 days to reach Earth, and another 4 days for orders to return. Meanwhile, whatever was happening in Delta 7 might disappear or move elsewhere. Lisa set course for the Delta 7 system, best possible speed. "Carlos, give me maximum power to the engines and prepare all defensive systems for potential combat operations." Amy, send a priority message to Fleet Command reporting our discovery and current intentions. The three officers immediately began following their orders. Lisa programmed the navigation computer for the fastest route to Delta 7. Carlos increased reactor output and began charging the Liberty's weapons and shields.
Amy composed a detailed message for transmission to Earth.
Explaining their situation, Jake sat in his command chair and watched the star field change direction as the Liberty turned toward the unknown energy signatures. He felt the familiar excitement that came with genuine exploration. The human race had always pushed beyond safe boundaries to discover what lay beyond the next hill or across the next ocean. Now they were pushing beyond the next star system. Estimated time to reach Delta 7, Jake asked. 4 hours and 30 minutes at current speed, Admiral, Lisa replied. Very good. All department heads report to the bridge in 1 hour for mission briefing. I want everyone to know what we might be facing before we arrive. Jake had commanded the Liberty through 3 previous first contact situations with alien traders and explorers. Each encounter had been peaceful but tense until both sides established communication and trust. However, 1,000 energy sources suggested something much larger than a simple trading mission or exploration fleet. The Liberty moved through space toward Delta 7 carrying 300 human souls into the unknown. Jake Harrison had no way of knowing that he was about to discover the largest military force in galactic history, preparing for war. He could not imagine that the Zephyrian Galactic Empire had ruled 10,000 star systems for longer than human civilization had existed. Most importantly, Jake had no idea that his decision to investigate would soon change the fate of every living being in the galaxy. The stars grew brighter ahead as the Liberty accelerated toward its appointment with destiny. Captain Sam Mitchell commanded the diplomatic vessel USS Horizon as it approached the edge of the Delta 7 system. The Horizon was smaller and faster than the Liberty, with specialized equipment for peaceful contact with alien civilizations. Sam had successfully handled 6 previous first contact missions and earned a reputation for staying calm under pressure, even when dealing with hostile or suspicious aliens. Dr. Helen Carter stood beside Sam on the bridge studying her portable scanner readings. Helen was the fleet's best xenobiologist with deep knowledge of alien cultures and communication methods. She was tall and thin with short blonde hair and sharp gray eyes that seemed to analyze everything around her. Helen had learned 12 different alien languages and understood the cultural differences that often caused problems during first contact situations. Commander Ryan Blake waited at the tactical station, monitoring the ship's defensive systems. Ryan was Sam's military advisor and security chief with orders to protect the diplomatic team if negotiations went wrong. He was broad-shouldered and serious-minded with dark skin and intelligent brown eyes. Ryan had served in 3 border conflicts before joining the diplomatic corps and knew how quickly peaceful talks could turn deadly. The Horizon had received Admiral Harrison's urgent message about the massive energy signatures 12 hours earlier. Fleet Command on Earth immediately ordered the diplomatic ship to attempt peaceful contact, while the Liberty maintained a safe distance. Standard protocol required exhausting all diplomatic options before considering military action against unknown alien forces. Sam studied the tactical display showing over 2,000 individual ships arranged in perfect military formation around the 4th planet of Delta 7. The alien fleet was enormous beyond human comprehension, with vessels ranging from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts larger than anything humans had ever built. Each ship showed clear signs of advanced technology and military purpose. Helen, what do you make of their formation and ship designs? Sam asked quietly. Helen pointed at the display and explained her analysis. The formation indicates a highly organized military hierarchy, Captain. The largest ships are positioned at the center with smaller vessels arranged in protective screens around them. This suggests a culture that values order and central command authority. The ship designs show technological advancement far beyond current human capabilities. Ryan added his own observations from a military perspective. The positioning and spacing indicates they are preparing for large-scale military operations, sir. This is not an exploration fleet or trading mission. These ships are arranged for conquest and they have enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. Sam nodded grimly and activated the communication system. Unknown alien fleet, this is Captain Sam Mitchell commanding the human diplomatic vessel USS Horizon. We come in peace-seeking dialogue and mutual understanding between our peoples. Please respond on any frequency. The response came immediately in perfect English with a cold mechanical voice. Human vessel, you will surrender immediately and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction. The Zephyrian Galactic Empire claims this system and all surrounding territory by right of conquest. Helen quickly worked at her translation computer trying to analyze the alien language patterns. Captain, the linguistic structure suggests an extremely hierarchical culture, with concepts of absolute authority and divine right to rule. They seem to view all other species as naturally inferior and subject to their commands. Sam tried again with a more formal diplomatic approach. Zephyrian Empire. We are authorized representatives of the United Earth government seeking peaceful relations between our civilizations. We request a meeting between diplomatic representatives to discuss mutual interests and avoid any misunderstandings. The alien voice returned with obvious anger and impatience. There will be no negotiations with inferior species. You will submit to imperial authority or face annihilation. This is your final warning before we demonstrate the consequences of defying the Empire. Ryan checked his tactical displays and reported troubling information. Captain, I'm detecting weapons lock from multiple alien ships. They are targeting our engines and life support systems. Whatever they are planning, it does not look peaceful. 3 massive alien vessels broke formation and approached the horizon at high speed. Each ship was 5 times larger than the human diplomatic vessel with obvious weapon ports and military equipment. The lead ship transmitted another message demanding immediate surrender and preparation for boarding by Imperial forces. Sam made a quick decision based on 20 years of diplomatic experience. These aliens showed no interest in peaceful contact and seemed determined to treat humans as conquered subjects rather than equals. Continuing the conversation would only give them time to surround and capture the horizon. Ryan, activate all defensive systems and prepare for emergency acceleration. Helen, record everything for transmission back to Fleet Command. We need to get this information to Admiral Harrison immediately. The alien ships opened fire without warning, using weapons that created brilliant purple energy beams. The first shot struck the horizon shields, causing the entire ship to shake violently. Ryan quickly activated the defensive systems that human engineers had developed. After studying captured alien technology from previous encounters, shields holding at 80%, Captain, but those weapons are more powerful than anything in our database. We can probably survive a few more hits, but not extended combat. Against ships that size, Sam ordered maximum acceleration away from the alien fleet while Helen transmitted all recorded data back toward the Liberty's position. The Horizon's engines were designed for speed rather than combat, but the ship could outrun most alien vessels if given enough space to maneuver. The pursuing alien ships continued firing while transmitting angry messages about the consequences of defying Imperial authority. Their weapons were powerful but seemed designed for destroying large, slow targets, rather than small, fast ships like the Horizon. The human vessel's shields absorbed most of the damage while its superior speed slowly opened the distance between hunter and prey. Helen, are you getting any useful intelligence from their transmissions? Sam asked while the ship shook from another near miss. Yes, Captain, their communication protocols reveal significant information about their technology and military doctrine. They rely heavily on overwhelming firepower and intimidation, rather than tactical flexibility. Their weapons are extremely powerful, but have limited tracking ability against fast-moving targets. Ryan monitored the pursuing ships and noticed an important weakness. Captain, the alien ships are maintaining rigid formation even during pursuit. They seem unable or unwilling to split up and use independent tactical thinking. If we can exploit that limitation, we might be able to escape. Sam ordered a series of rapid course changes that forced the alien ships to choose between maintaining formation or achieving effective weapons locks. The aliens chose formation every time, allowing the Horizon to gradually increase its lead and escape into deep space. 6 hours later, the Horizon rendezvoused with the Liberty at a safe distance from the alien fleet. Sam immediately met with Admiral Harrison to share intelligence about the Zephyrian Empire and their hostile intentions toward humanity. Admiral, these aliens have no interest in peaceful coexistence, Sam reported grimly. They view all other species as naturally inferior and expect immediate submission to their authority. They have technology and firepower far beyond anything we have seen before, but they also show tactical limitations that we might be able to exploit. Jake Harrison studied the recorded data and realized that humanity faced the greatest threat in its history. Somewhere out there, an vast alien empire was preparing for war, and Earth had no idea what was coming. High Admiral Kethmore stood in the command center of the Imperial Palace on Thys Prime, staring at the reports from Fleet Commander Vexithan with complete disbelief. The massive alien was 8 feet tall with dark purple skin and 4 arms that ended in sharp claws. His yellow eyes burned with rage as he read the impossible news from the Delta 7 system. Grand Strategist Ylvin waited nervously beside the command throne holding additional reports from the frontier. Ylvin was smaller than most Zephyrians with pale blue skin and 6 tentacle-like appendages that constantly moved when he was thinking. He had served the Empire for 300 years and had never seen High Admiral Kethmore show such anger. Supreme Inquisitor Naxtal stood silently in the shadows, watching everything with cold calculation. Naxtal was thin and tall with black skin and red eyes that seemed to see into the souls of anyone he looked at. His job was finding and destroying any threat to Imperial authority, no matter how small or distant. Explain to me how a single primitive vessel escaped from an entire Imperial fleet, Kethmore demanded in a voice that made the walls shake. Ylvin consulted his datapad and read the official report carefully. According to Fleet Commander Vexthan, the alien vessel calling itself human refused to surrender when properly commanded. When the fleet moved to capture the ship for interrogation, it somehow evaded Imperial weapons and escaped into deep space. Impossible, Kethmore roared while smashing his fist against the command console. No species has ever escaped Imperial justice once marked for capture. The humans are obviously more advanced than our initial intelligence suggested. Naxtal stepped forward from the shadows and spoke in his quiet, dangerous voice. High Admiral, I have reviewed all available data about this human species. They appear to be a young race that has only recently developed space travel technology. Their ships are primitive compared to Imperial standards, and their weapons are crude chemical and nuclear devices. Kethmore turned his burning yellow eyes toward the Inquisitor. Then how do you explain their escape from a superior Imperial force? I believe Fleet Commander Vexthan has become soft from centuries of easy victories over inferior species. Perhaps the humans simply caught him unprepared for any resistance whatsoever. It has been over 1,000 years since any species dared to defy Imperial commands. Ylvin consulted his historical records and confirmed the Inquisitor's assessment. The last species to resist Imperial authority were the Corvani rebels, who were completely destroyed 800 years ago. Since then, every first contact situation has resulted in immediate surrender and acceptance of Imperial rule. Kethmore walked to the great window overlooking the Imperial capital city. Millions of alien slaves worked in the factories and mines that powered the Empire's war machine. Representatives from 1,000 conquered species bowed before Zephyrian masters and accepted their fate as servants of the superior race. The sight usually filled him with pride, but today it reminded him that the Empire's strength came from fear and overwhelming force. The humans will learn the price of defying Imperial authority, Kethmore declared while watching slave convoys moving through the streets below. I want a battle fleet dispatched immediately to their home system. These primitives will surrender or be destroyed as an example to any other species that might consider resistance. Ylvin checked the fleet deployment records and made a recommendation. High Admiral, the 7th Patrol Fleet is currently available for immediate deployment. Captain Zorketh commands 50 ships including 2 heavy cruisers and 8 destroyers. Such force should be more than adequate to deal with a primitive human resistance. 50 ships to destroy one species? Naxtal questioned with obvious skepticism. That seems excessive for dealing with primitives who barely understand space travel technology. Kethmore turned back to face his advisors with determination burning in his yellow eyes. The humans have already proven they are more troublesome than expected. 50 ships will ensure complete victory and send a clear message to any other species that might question Imperial authority, Captain. Zorketh received his orders 3 hours later while commanding the Imperial battleship Void Render in the Outer System. Zorketh was a typical Zephyrian military officer with absolute faith in Imperial superiority and complete contempt for all inferior species. He had commanded successful conquest operations against 12 different alien civilizations without ever losing a single ship. The 7th Patrol Fleet consisted of 50 warships ranging from fast attack vessels to massive battle cruisers capable of destroying entire planets. Each ship carried advanced weapons and shields that had been perfected over 10,000 years of galactic conquest. The fleet's firepower could level continents, and its combined shields could withstand nuclear bombardment. Zorketh studied the intelligence reports about human technology and found nothing impressive. Human ships used primitive rocket engines and nuclear weapons that were thousands of years behind Imperial standards. Their largest battleships were smaller than Imperial destroyers and carried weapons that could barely scratch modern Zephyrian armor. Navigation officer set course for the human home system designated Sol. Zorketh commanded from his throne on the bridge. Maximum speed. I want to crush these primitives and return to base before the next duty rotation. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Admiral Patricia Collins convened an emergency meeting of the Human Defense Council in the underground command center beneath Geneva. The massive chamber held representatives from every human colony and military installation in known space. Admiral Collins was a stern woman with gray hair and intelligent blue eyes who had spent 30 years preparing Earth's defenses against unknown threats. General Kevin Taylor sat at the strategy table studying tactical projections on the main display screen. Kevin was tall and broad with the bearing of a professional soldier who had fought in 3 colonial wars. His expertise in ground combat and planetary defense made him invaluable for planning Earth's protection against alien invasion. Director of Intelligence Monica Walsh presented the latest analysis of Zephyrian military capabilities based on data collected by the USS Horizon. Monica was small and quick with dark hair and sharp green eyes that missed no detail. She had built Earth's intelligence network from nothing and knew more about alien threats than anyone else in human space. Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Stephen Parker reviewed fleet deployment options with growing concern. Stephen commanded all human military vessels and understood better than anyone how outmatched humanity would be in direct confrontation with Imperial forces. His weathered face showed the strain of preparing for an impossible war. Ladies and gentlemen, we face the greatest threat in human history, Admiral Collins announced to the assembled council. Intelligence indicates that an alien empire with technology far beyond our current capabilities is preparing military action against human space. We must assume they intend complete conquest or destruction of our civilization. General Taylor studied the tactical data and shook his head grimly. Admiral, the numbers are overwhelming. If their fleet consists of thousands of ships as reported, we cannot hope to match them in direct combat. Our entire military consists of 12 battleships and maybe 40 smaller vessels. Monica Walsh added disturbing intelligence about Imperial capabilities. Analysis of their ship designs and weapons technology suggests they have conquered multiple star systems and enslaved entire civilizations. They appear to view all other species as naturally inferior and show no interest in peaceful coexistence. Admiral Parker considered their limited options and proposed a desperate strategy. We cannot win a conventional war against these aliens, but we might be able to make conquest too expensive for them to maintain. If we can inflict enough casualties, they might decide to leave human space alone. Admiral Collins nodded and began issuing orders that would determine humanity's survival. Unknown to everyone in the room, Captain Zorketh's fleet was already accelerating toward Earth, carrying enough firepower to end human civilization forever. Rear Admiral Danny Foster sat in his office deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, studying tactical simulations that showed humanity losing every possible engagement with Zephyrian forces. Danny was known throughout the fleet as the most brilliant strategic mind of his generation, with an ability to find weaknesses in seemingly impossible situations. His brown hair was already showing gray streaks despite being only 40 years old, and his green eyes held the intensity of someone who never stopped thinking about problems. Chief Scientist Dr. Nathan Webb worked at his laboratory complex trying to understand Zephyrian technology from the limited data collected by the USS Horizon. Nathan was a tall, thin man with wild gray hair and thick glasses who had devoted his entire life to advancing human science and technology. His team of researchers had made breakthrough discoveries in weapons systems and defensive technologies that kept humanity competitive with more advanced alien civilizations. Dr. Claire Johnson led the materials research division, working frantically to develop new armor and shielding systems that might protect human ships against Imperial weapons. Claire was young and energetic with red hair and bright blue eyes that sparkled with curiosity about everything around her. She had earned 3 advanced degrees before age 30 and held patents on 17 different technologies currently used by the human fleet. Engineer Tony Martinez supervised the weapons development program in a massive underground facility that had been secretly built over the past 5 years. Tony was a practical man with strong hands and a quiet voice who could build anything if given enough time and resources. His team had been working on experimental weapon systems based on captured alien technology and theoretical physics research. Admiral Foster studied the tactical data and realized that conventional military thinking would only lead to human extinction. The Zephyrian Empire had overwhelming advantages in numbers, technology, and experience, while humanity had only 12 battleships and a few dozen smaller vessels. However, Danny had noticed something interesting in the communication patterns recorded by the Horizon crew. The aliens rely heavily on rigid command structures and predictable tactical doctrines, Danny explained to his staff during their morning briefing. They seem incapable of adapting to unexpected situations or thinking independently during combat operations. Dr. Webb looked up from his technical analysis and added supporting evidence. The ship designs confirm Admiral Foster's assessment, Nathan. Every Zephyrian vessel follows identical construction patterns with weapons and systems placed in predictable locations. They appear to value standardization over innovation. Dr. Johnson had been studying the energy readings from Imperial weapons and discovered potential weaknesses. Their weapons are extremely powerful but operate on fixed frequency patterns, Claire. If we can develop adaptive shielding technology, we might be able to reduce their effectiveness significantly. Tony Martinez had been working on kinetic bombardment systems that could penetrate even advanced alien armor. Admiral, I think we can modify our missile systems to carry tungsten penetrators at extremely high velocity. Even superior alien armor has limits if we hit it hard enough and fast enough. Danny walked to the main tactical display and began outlining his strategy for defending human space against impossible odds. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot win a conventional war against the Zephyrian Empire, but we do not need to win conventionally. We only need to make conquest too expensive for them to maintain. The plan Danny proposed was unlike anything in military history. Instead of meeting Imperial forces in direct battle, human ships would use hit-and-run tactics to strike at enemy weaknesses while avoiding their strengths. Human vessels would operate independently, using asteroid fields and planetary gravity wells as tactical advantages against larger but less maneuverable Imperial ships, Captain. Julie Sanders received her orders while commanding the USS Defiance at the Outer System Defense Station. Julie was a combat veteran with 15 years of experience fighting pirates and smugglers in the frontier regions. She was tall and athletic with short black hair and determined brown eyes that had seen too much combat. Her reputation for tactical innovation and aggressive leadership made her the perfect choice for implementing Admiral Foster's desperate strategy. Commander Brad Wilson commanded the USS Relentless from the forward tactical station on his bridge. Brad was young for his rank but had proven himself during 3 previous engagements with hostile aliens. His quick thinking and willingness to take calculated risks had saved his ship and crew multiple times. Brad understood that conventional tactics would be useless against Imperial forces. Commander Ashley Chen led the USS Valiant with a crew that had trained extensively in unconventional warfare tactics. Ashley was small and quiet with an analytical mind that could process complex tactical situations faster than most computers. Her specialty was finding weaknesses in enemy formations and exploiting them with precision strikes. Commander Gary Thompson controlled the heavy cruiser USS Thunderstorm, which carried the most advanced weapon systems in the human fleet. Gary was a big man with a loud voice and aggressive personality who preferred direct action over complicated strategies. However, he understood the need for new tactics when facing superior forces. The 12 ships of Captain Sanders' fleet represented humanity's entire deep space combat capability. Each vessel had been retrofitted with experimental weapons and defensive systems developed by Dr. Webb's research teams. The modifications were untested in real combat, but theoretical analysis suggested they might give human forces a fighting chance against Imperial technology. Dr. Webb's team had developed adaptive shielding technology that could analyze incoming weapons fire and adjust defensive frequencies accordingly. The system required enormous amounts of power, but could theoretically reduce the effectiveness of Zephyrian energy weapons by 60% or more. Tony Martinez had equipped each ship with kinetic bombardment arrays that could launch tungsten penetrators at significant fractions of light speed. The weapons were designed to punch through even advanced alien armor using pure kinetic energy rather than exotic technologies that humans did not fully understand. Dr. Johnson had created new armor composites using materials science techniques that combined human engineering with alien technology principles. The armor was lighter and stronger than previous designs while offering better protection against both energy, weapons, and kinetic impacts. The fleet began intensive training exercises using asteroid fields in the outer solar system to practice the hit-and-run tactics that might keep them alive against Imperial forces. Each captain learned to use gravity wells and space debris as tactical advantages while coordinating with other ships through encrypted communications that the enemy could not intercept. Lieutenant Commander Peter Hayes led the fighter squadron Crimson Wing through practice attacks against simulated Imperial formations. Peter was a young pilot with exceptional reflexes and tactical instincts who had scored the highest marks in Academy history. His squadron of 20 advanced fighters could theoretically penetrate Imperial defenses and strike at critical ship systems. The fighters had been equipped with experimental quantum torpedoes that could phase through standard shields and detonate inside enemy vessels. The weapons were extremely dangerous to use and had only been tested in computer simulations, but they represented humanity's best hope for inflicting significant damage on Imperial ships. Admiral Foster watched the training exercises and felt cautiously optimistic about human chances for survival. The tactics were unorthodox, and the weapons were untested, but sometimes desperation could overcome superior technology. Through sheer determination and innovative thinking, Captain Zorketh's Imperial fleet was now only 3 days away from Earth, traveling at maximum speed toward what the aliens expected would be an easy conquest. The Zephyrian commander had no idea that he was about to face an enemy unlike anything the Empire had encountered in its 10,000-year history. Captain Zorketh stood on the bridge of his flagship Void Render as the 7th Patrol Fleet entered the Kepler system, where human colonies had been established on 3 different planets. The Zephyrian commander expected to find frightened primitives begging for mercy, but instead his sensors detected 12 human warships waiting in battle formation near the system's largest asteroid field. Navigation. Officer, bring us to attack formation. Zorketh commanded with complete confidence. Communications officer, demand the immediate surrender of all human forces. If they refuse, we will demonstrate the consequences of defying Imperial authority. The 50 Imperial ships moved into their standard battle formation, with heavy cruisers at the center, surrounded by destroyers and fast attack vessels. Each ship carried weapons capable of destroying cities and shields that could withstand nuclear bombardment. The combined firepower of the fleet could turn entire planets into lifeless rocks. Captain Julie Sanders watched the approaching Imperial fleet from the bridge of the USS Defiance and felt her heart racing despite years of combat experience. The enemy ships were massive and obviously powerful, but Admiral Foster's tactical analysis had identified potential weaknesses that might be exploited by smaller, faster human vessels. All ships prepare for Operation Lightning Strike, Julie commanded through encrypted communications. Remember, we are not trying to destroy their entire fleet. We only need to inflict enough casualties to make them reconsider the cost of conquering human space. Commander Brad Wilson positioned the USS Relentless behind a large asteroid that concealed his ship from Imperial sensors. Brad had studied the enemy formation and identified the command vessel that would be coordinating their attack patterns. If he could disable or destroy that ship, the other Imperial vessels might lose tactical coordination. Commander Ashley Shen moved the USS Valiant to the edge of the asteroid field, where her ship's advanced sensors could track individual enemy vessels without being detected. Ashley had been assigned to coordinate the human attack and ensure that all 12 ships struck simultaneously for maximum effect. Commander Gary Thompson brought the USS Thunderstorm to the system's edge, where his heavy weapons could provide long-range fire support during the engagement. Gary understood that his ship was too large and slow to participate in the hit-and-run tactics, but his firepower might be crucial for penetrating Imperial defenses. The Imperial fleet transmitted their surrender demand using the same arrogant tone that had worked against hundreds of other species over the centuries. Human vessels, you will surrender immediately and prepare for boarding. Your species will be evaluated for potential service to the Zephyrian Empire. Resistance will result in complete destruction. Julie Sanders responded with quiet determination that surprised the alien commander. Zephyrian Fleet, this is Captain Sanders commanding the Human Defense Force. We reject your demands and will defend our colonies against any aggression. If you want our worlds, you will have to take them. Zorketh could not believe that primitive aliens would dare to challenge Imperial authority after seeing the size and power of his fleet. Weapons officer, target the largest human vessel and prepare to demonstrate Imperial superiority. One demonstration should convince the others to surrender. The Imperial flagship opened fire with massive energy weapons that created brilliant purple beams across space toward the USS Defiance. However, Julie had anticipated this response and activated her ship's experimental adaptive shielding just before the weapon struck. The shields analyzed the incoming energy and adjusted their frequency patterns to deflect most of the damage. Direct hit on the human flagship, the Imperial weapons officer reported. However, their shields appear to have absorbed most of the damage. Our weapons were less effective than predicted. Before Zorketh could respond, the human fleet launched their coordinated attack using tactics unlike anything in Imperial experience. Instead of meeting the aliens in direct battle, the human ships scattered in different directions using the asteroid field to break up Imperial formations and create confusion. Commander Wilson's USS, Relentless, emerged from behind its asteroid concealment and launched a full spread of kinetic penetrators at the Imperial command ship. The tungsten projectiles traveled at tremendous velocity and punched through the alien vessel's shields like they were not even there. Multiple hits along the command ship's hull caused massive explosions and system failures. Lieutenant Commander Peter Hayes led Crimson Wing Fighter Squadron in a precision strike against the Imperial formation's center. The 20 fighters moved through the asteroid field using rocks and debris as cover while approaching their targets. Each fighter carried experimental quantum torpedoes designed to phase through shields and detonate inside enemy ships. Crimson leader, to all fighters, target the heavy cruisers and launch torpedoes on my mark, Peter commanded while dodging defensive fire from multiple Imperial vessels. The fighters moved with incredible speed and agility that Imperial gunners could not track effectively. The quantum torpedoes penetrated Imperial shields as designed and exploded inside several enemy ships, causing catastrophic damage to critical systems. 3 Imperial heavy cruisers suffered massive explosions that disabled their weapons and propulsion systems. The alien crews had never encountered weapons that could bypass their defensive technologies. Commander Chen coordinated the human attack from her position at the asteroid field edge, while tracking the battle's progress through advanced sensors. All ships, the enemy formation is breaking apart. Press the attack while they are confused and unable to coordinate their response. The USS Valiant launched its own kinetic bombardment at Imperial destroyers that were trying to reform their battle line. Ashley's targeting was precise and devastating as tungsten penetrators struck enemy ships at their most vulnerable points. 2 destroyers exploded completely while a third lost all power and began drifting helplessly. Commander Thompson's USS Thunderstorm provided long-range fire support with its heavy plasma cannons that had been upgraded with alien technology principles. The massive weapons could not penetrate Imperial shields directly, but they created enough interference to disrupt enemy targeting systems and communication networks. Zorketh watched his perfectly organized fleet dissolve into chaos as human ships appeared and disappeared throughout the asteroid field like ghosts. Imperial vessels tried to maintain formation but found themselves fighting individual engagements against enemies that refused to stand and fight conventional battles. How are primitive humans causing such damage to Imperial forces? Zorketh demanded while his flagship shook from another kinetic impact. Their weapons should not be able to penetrate our shields. His tactical officer studied the sensor readings and provided disturbing analysis. Captain, the human weapons use pure kinetic energy rather than directed energy systems. Our shields are designed to deflect energy weapons, but physical projectiles at high velocity can penetrate our defenses. The battle continued for 6 hours with human ships using the asteroid field to their advantage while Imperial forces struggled to adapt to unconventional tactics. Every time the aliens tried to organize a coordinated response, the humans would strike from unexpected directions and then disappear back into the rocks and debris. By the end of the engagement, 38 Imperial ships had been destroyed or disabled, while the human fleet lost only 3 vessels. The USS Defender had been caught in open space and overwhelmed by concentrated enemy fire. The USS Guardian suffered catastrophic damage when its experimental shielding failed during sustained bombardment. The USS Warrior was destroyed while making a heroic attack run against an Imperial battlecruiser. Captain Zorketh found himself commanding only 12 functional ships from his original fleet of 50 vessels. The survivors were damaged and demoralized after suffering the first significant defeat in Imperial military history. The impossible had happened, and primitive humans had proven that the Empire was not invincible. Navigation officer set course for Imperial space immediately. Zorketh ordered with his pride and career in ruins. Communications officer transmit a priority message to High Admiral Kethmore explaining our situation and requesting immediate reinforcements. The surviving Imperial ships limped away from the Kepler system while human forces celebrated their incredible victory against impossible odds. However, everyone understood that this was only the beginning, and the Empire would return with overwhelming force to avenge their humiliation. High Admiral Kethmore read Captain Zorketh's battle report 3 times before accepting that the impossible had actually occurred. The massive Zephyrian leader sat in his command throne on Thess Prime, staring at casualty figures that defied 10,000 years of Imperial military history. 38 ships destroyed by primitive humans who barely understood space travel technology. Grand Strategist Yilvin studied the tactical recordings transmitted by the surviving Imperial vessels with growing amazement and concern. The blue-skinned alien had analyzed thousands of previous conquest operations, but had never seen anything like the human combat doctrine displayed at Kepler system. His 6 tentacles moved nervously as he processed data that challenged everything he believed about military science. High Admiral, the human tactics are completely outside our experience, Yilvin reported while displaying holographic recordings of the battle. They refused to engage in conventional formation combat and instead used hit-and-run attacks from concealed positions. Our ships were unable to target them effectively, while they struck at our most vulnerable points. Supreme Inquisitor Naxtal emerged from the shadows where he had been watching the proceedings with cold calculation. The tall, thin alien with black skin and red eyes had served the Empire for 500 years and had never seen military leadership show such confusion and uncertainty. His job was identifying threats to Imperial authority, and these humans represented the greatest threat in galactic history. The humans demonstrated several technological capabilities that do not appear in our intelligence files, Naxtal reported in his quiet, dangerous voice. Their weapons use kinetic energy rather than directed energy systems, which allowed them to penetrate our standard shielding technology. Their defensive systems showed adaptive capabilities that reduced the effectiveness of our weapons by significant margins. Kethmore slammed his 4 fists against the command console and roared with rage that echoed throughout the Imperial Palace. How did our intelligence services fail to detect such advanced capabilities in a primitive species? Someone will answer for this failure with their life. Director of Intelligence Kexvor bowed low before the High Admiral while trying to explain the intelligence failure. Kexvor was a small, nervous alien with gray skin and large black eyes, who had built his career on providing accurate information about potential threats to the Empire. His failure to properly assess human capabilities had cost the Empire its first military defeat in centuries. High Admiral, our initial contact with human traders indicated a young species with limited technological development, Kexvor explained while trembling with fear. Their ships appeared primitive, and their weapons seemed crude by Imperial standards. We had no reason to suspect they possessed advanced military capabilities. Your incompetence has cost the Empire 38 warships and damaged our reputation for invincibility, Kethmore declared while considering whether to execute the intelligence director immediately. How do you propose to correct this failure? Kexvor consulted his data files and provided updated intelligence about human capabilities. High Admiral, we now know that humans possess adaptive shielding technology, kinetic weapon systems, and tactical doctrines based on unconventional warfare principles. However, they still have only 12 capital ships and limited industrial capacity compared to Imperial resources. Yilvin studied the strategic implications of the defeat and recommended immediate action to restore Imperial prestige. High Admiral, If news of this defeat spreads to other species throughout the galaxy, we may face widespread rebellion against Imperial authority. We must demonstrate overwhelming force against the humans to maintain our reputation for invincibility. Naxtal agreed with the strategic assessment, but warned about underestimating human capabilities again. The humans have proven they are more dangerous than anticipated. We should not assume that superior numbers alone will guarantee victory against an enemy that fights with such unexpected methods. Kethmore considered his options while staring at the tactical recordings that showed Imperial ships being destroyed by primitive human vessels. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years through overwhelming technological superiority and absolute ruthlessness against any resistance. No species had ever successfully challenged Imperial authority until now. "I want War Marshal," Vexkala recalled from the Outer Rim immediately. Kethmore commanded with cold determination. "He will take the Third Imperial Armada and crush the human resistance completely. 500 ships should be adequate to deal with 12 human vessels regardless of their tactical innovations." War Marshal Vexkalar was the Empire's most experienced military commander with a reputation for completely annihilating species that dared to resist Imperial conquest. The massive alien warrior had commanded successful operations against 47 different civilizations over the past 3 centuries. His Third Imperial Armada consisted of the Empire's most advanced warships and elite combat units. Meanwhile, on Earth, the news of victory at Kepler system created celebration, mixed with grim determination about the future. Admiral Patricia Collins knew that the Empire would respond with overwhelming force, and humanity needed to prepare for the fight of its existence. The underground command center buzzed with activity as military leaders planned for the coming storm. General Kevin Taylor studied intelligence reports about Imperial military capabilities and felt deep concern about human chances for survival. "Admiral, the Empire has thousands of ships throughout the galaxy and virtually unlimited resources. We cannot hope to match them in a prolonged conflict." Director of Intelligence Monica Walsh had been analyzing captured Imperial technology and communication protocols from the Kepler battle. The Empire's strength comes from their ability to intimidate other species into submission without fighting. However, they seem unprepared for enemies that refuse to surrender and fight with unconventional tactics. Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Stephen Parker reviewed human fleet strength and industrial capacity with growing worry. "We have 9 operational battleships remaining after the Kepler engagement, plus maybe 30 smaller vessels. Even with our tactical advantages, we cannot fight the entire Imperial fleet." Dr. Nathan Webb had been studying the tactical recordings from Kepler and felt cautiously optimistic about human defensive capabilities. "Admiral, our adaptive shielding and kinetic weapons proved effective against Imperial technology. If we can continue to exploit their tactical limitations, we might be able to make conquest too expensive for them to maintain." Admiral Collins walked to the strategic display showing Imperial fleet movements throughout the galaxy and realized that humanity faced its greatest test. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Empire will not make the same mistakes twice. They will come with overwhelming force, and we must be ready to fight for our survival as a species." Dr. Alex Morgan joined the research team working frantically to develop new technologies that might give humanity additional advantages against Imperial forces. Alex was a brilliant theorist with innovative ideas about exotic physics applications that could revolutionize human weapons and defensive systems. Dr. Rachel Foster led the weapons development program, creating new generations of kinetic bombardment systems and defensive technologies. Rachel had been working with captured Imperial components to understand their technological principles and find new weaknesses to exploit. Engineer Tony Martinez supervised the construction of new weapon systems in hidden facilities throughout the solar system. Tony understood that humanity would need every possible advantage when the Empire returned with their full military might. The human colonies throughout known space began evacuation procedures, while military forces prepared defensive positions in asteroid fields and planetary systems that offered tactical advantages. Everyone understood that the next battle would determine whether humanity survived as a free species or joined the countless others enslaved by the Zephyrian Empire. War Marshal Vexkalar received his orders while commanding operations against rebel forces in the Outer Rim. The veteran warrior felt excited about the opportunity to crush the upstart humans who had dared to challenge Imperial authority. His 500-ship armada represented enough firepower to destroy entire star systems, and no primitive species could hope to resist such overwhelming force. War Marshal Vexcolor commanded the 3rd Imperial Armada from his massive flagship Eternal Dominion, as 500 Zephyrian warships entered the Sol system in perfect battle formation. The veteran commander had spent 3 months studying human tactics from the Kepler engagement, and believed he understood how to counter their unconventional warfare methods. His fleet included the Empire's most advanced dreadnoughts and elite Void Guard squadrons trained specifically for dealing with resistant species. The War Marshal was larger than most Zephyrians, with battle scars covering his dark purple skin from centuries of galactic conquest. His forearms ended in cybernetic claws that could crush steel, and his yellow eyes burned with cold intelligence that had never failed to achieve complete victory. Vexcolor had personally overseen the destruction of 47 civilizations and viewed the humans as just another inferior species that would soon learn the price of defying Imperial authority. Admiral Patricia Collins watched the approaching Imperial fleet from her command, bunker deep beneath the Swiss Alps, while coordinating humanity's desperate defense strategy. The massive alien armada represented more firepower than humans had ever faced, and conventional military wisdom suggested that resistance was hopeless. However, Collins had spent months preparing Operation Prometheus, which would scatter human forces across multiple star systems and force the Empire to divide their overwhelming strength. Fleet Captain Roger Hayes commanded the primary human battle group consisting of 30 ships, including newly commissioned vessels equipped with the latest weapons and defensive technologies. Roger was a combat veteran with 20 years of experience fighting pirates and hostile aliens in the frontier regions. His weathered face showed the strain of preparing for an impossible battle, but his brown eyes held the determination of someone who would never surrender. Commander Kate Miller took command of the newly commissioned USS Thunderbolt, which carried experimental quantum weapon systems developed by Dr. Nathan Webb's research team. Kate was young for such responsibility, but had proven herself during the Kepler engagement with innovative tactical thinking and courage under fire. Her ship represented humanity's most advanced technology, concentrated into a single devastating weapons platform. The human fleet had been reinforced with vessels from every colony and outpost in known space, but still numbered only 30 ships against 500 Imperial warships. Each human vessel carried crews who understood they were fighting for the survival of their entire species. There would be no retreat and no surrender, because the Empire had made clear that resistance meant complete annihilation. War Marshal Vexcolor studied the human defensive positions and felt confident about achieving quick victory despite their previous tactical successes. Navigation Officer, deploy the fleet in standard conquest formation. Communications Officer, demand immediate surrender of all human forces. If they refuse, we will demonstrate why resistance to Imperial authority is futile. The Imperial fleet moved into attack formation with massive dreadnoughts at the center, surrounded by heavy cruisers and fast attack vessels. Each ship carried weapons capable of destroying cities and shields that had never been penetrated by inferior alien technology. The combined firepower represented enough destructive force to reduce Earth to molten slag within hours. Admiral Collins activated Operation Prometheus by transmitting coded signals to human forces throughout the solar system. Instead of concentrating their limited ships for a hopeless battle against overwhelming numbers, the humans scattered in different directions, forcing the Imperial fleet to divide their strength to pursue multiple targets. Captain Julie Sanders led one battle group toward the asteroid belt, where her ships could use rocks and debris as tactical advantages against larger Imperial vessels. The USS Defiance had been repaired and upgraded with new weapon systems that had proven effective during the Kepler engagement. Julie understood that conventional tactics would lead to certain defeat, but hit-and-run attacks might inflict enough casualties to make the Empire reconsider their conquest plans. Commander Brad Wilson took his squadron toward Jupiter's moons, where the complex gravitational environment would interfere with Imperial targeting systems and communications networks. The USS Relentless carried new kinetic bombardment arrays capable of penetrating even the most advanced alien armor through pure velocity and impact force. The Climactic engagement began near Saturn where Fleet Captain Hayes positioned his main battle group using the planet's rings as cover and concealment. The swirling ice particles interfered with Imperial sensors, while providing human ships with unexpected tactical opportunities. Hayes had studied the ring system extensively and knew how to use its unique properties against conventional military thinking. All ships activate adaptive shielding and prepare for sustained combat. Hayes commanded through encrypted communications that the Empire could not intercept. Remember, we are not trying to destroy their entire fleet. We only need to inflict enough casualties to prove that conquering humanity will cost more than the Empire is willing to pay. War Marshal Vexcalar divided his fleet into multiple squadrons to pursue the scattered human forces, but quickly discovered that this reduced his overwhelming numerical advantage. Imperial ships found themselves fighting individual engagements against enemies that used unconventional tactics and refused to engage in predictable formation battles. Commander Kate Miller's USS Thunderbolt emerged from Saturn's rings and launched experimental quantum torpedoes at the Imperial squadron, attempting to destroy Hayes's main battle group. The new weapons phased through enemy shields and detonated inside Zephyrian vessels, causing catastrophic damage to critical systems. 3 Imperial heavy cruisers suffered massive explosions that disabled their weapons and propulsion systems. Lieutenant Commander Peter Hayes led expanded fighter squadrons and coordinated strikes against Imperial command vessels while using Saturn's moons as bases for refueling and rearming operations. The human fighters moved with incredible speed and agility through the ring system where larger Imperial ships could not follow. Effectively, the battle raged for 18 hours with human forces inflicting far more damage than Imperial strategists had thought possible. War Marshal Vexcalar watched his perfectly organized fleet struggle against enemies that appeared and disappeared like ghosts throughout Saturn's complex orbital environment. How are these primitives causing such damage to elite Imperial forces? Vexcalar demanded while his flagship shook from kinetic impacts that penetrated its shields. Their technology should be inferior to our advanced systems. His tactical officer provided disturbing analysis based on sensor readings from the engagement. War Marshal, the humans are using Saturn's gravitational field and ring particles to amplify the effectiveness of their weapons while reducing our targeting accuracy. They appear to understand orbital mechanics better than our navigation specialists. The turning point came when Commander Ashley Chen's USS Phoenix detected a critical weakness in the Imperial formation. The enemy ships were maintaining rigid tactical spacing that made them vulnerable to coordinated attack if human forces could achieve sufficient concentration of firepower at the right moment. All ships, this is Phoenix Actual. Ashley transmitted to the scattered human fleet. I have identified a tactical opportunity that could inflict decisive damage on the enemy command structure. However, it will require a coordinated suicide attack against the Imperial flagship. Fleet Captain Hayes understood immediately what Ashley was proposing and felt his heart sink. Phoenix Actual, are you certain this is our only option for achieving mission objectives? Affirmative, Captain, Ashley replied with calm determination. The Imperial command ship is maintaining position at the center of their formation. If we can destroy it, the other enemy vessels will lose tactical coordination and become vulnerable to individual attack. Ashley, Chen had been studying the Imperial fleet structure and realized that Zephyrian military doctrine relied heavily on centralized command authority. If the flagship could be eliminated, the remaining ships would struggle to coordinate their response to human attacks. The USS Phoenix broke formation and accelerated directly toward the Eternal Dominion, while every weapon on both fleets concentrated fire on the small human vessel. Ashley's ship survived the gauntlet through pure speed and innovative maneuvering that confused Imperial targeting systems. This is Commander Chen to all human forces. Ashley transmitted during her final approach. Remember that freedom is worth any sacrifice. Make the Empire pay for every star system they try to conquer. The USS Phoenix crashed into the Eternal Dominion with its reactor deliberately overloading to create a massive explosion that destroyed both vessels and killed War Marshal Vexcalar along with his entire command staff. The loss of central coordination threw the Imperial fleet into chaos just as Hayes had predicted. Human forces pressed their advantage, while Imperial ships struggled to reorganize without their commanding officer. By the end of the engagement, 200 Zephyrian vessels had been destroyed or disabled while humanity lost half of their fleet, including many irreplaceable ships and experienced crews. The surviving Imperial forces retreated. High Admiral Kethmore stood before the Imperial Council on Thais Prime, reading reports of the Third Armada's destruction with growing horror and disbelief. War Marshal Vexcalar was dead along with 200 of the Empire's most advanced warships, while a handful of primitive human vessels had somehow achieved another impossible victory. The massive Zephyrian leader felt his authority crumbling as council members whispered about rebellion and regime change. Grand Strategist Yilvin studied tactical recordings from the Saturn engagement and realized that the Empire faced an enemy unlike anything in their 10,000-year history. High Admiral, the humans continue to demonstrate tactical innovations that our military doctrine cannot counter effectively. They refuse to fight conventional battles and exploit every possible advantage in their environment. Supreme Inquisitor Naxtal emerged from the shadows with intelligence reports that confirmed the Empire's worst fears. High Admiral, news of our defeats has spread throughout the galaxy, despite our efforts to suppress information. 17 different species have now declared independence from Imperial authority, and 6 more systems have stopped responding to our communications. The myth of Imperial invincibility had been shattered by human resistance, and subject species throughout the galaxy were beginning to believe that freedom might be possible. Rebellions that had been crushed for centuries were erupting on dozens of worlds as enslaved populations saw hope for the first time in generations. Director of Intelligence Kex4 provided even more disturbing news about the galactic situation. High Admiral, our forces are stretched thin, trying to contain rebellions while maintaining control over critical systems. We estimate that full-scale galactic war will begin within months unless we can restore our reputation for invincibility. Kethmore realized that the Empire faced the greatest crisis in its history and that traditional military solutions might no longer be adequate. How many ships do we have available for immediate deployment against human space? Yilvin consulted his strategic databases and provided grim statistics, including all reserve fleets and garrison forces. We could assemble approximately 1,500 ships for operations against Earth. However, this would require withdrawing protection from many Imperial systems that are already showing signs of unrest. Meanwhile, on Earth, Ambassador Linda Brooks worked with Dr. Helen Carter and a team of diplomats to establish communication with rebel species throughout the galaxy. Linda was an experienced negotiator who understood that humanity's military victories had created opportunities for political solutions that could end Imperial tyranny forever. Ambassador Brooks had been studying reports from across the galaxy and realized that dozens of species were ready to join an alliance against Zephyrian rule. Dr. Carter, we have received communication from rebel leaders on 43 different worlds. They are requesting human assistance in coordinating resistance against Imperial forces. Dr. Carter analyzed the alien communications and found encouraging signs of organized opposition to the Empire. Ambassador, many of these species possess advanced technology and significant military capabilities. If we can coordinate their efforts with human tactics, we might be able to challenge Imperial authority throughout the galaxy. Negotiator Martin Kelly had been working to establish the framework for a new galactic government based on cooperation rather than domination. Martin understood that defeating the Empire militarily was only the first step toward creating lasting peace and freedom for all species. Admiral Patricia Collins now held the rank of Fleet Admiral and supervised the construction of new human shipyards throughout former Imperial space. The underground facilities could produce warships faster than anyone had thought possible using modular construction techniques and automated manufacturing systems. Dr. Webb, how quickly can we expand our fleet to support galactic operations? Collins asked during their morning briefing. Dr. Nathan Webb studied production schedules and resource allocation reports with cautious optimism. Admiral, we can produce approximately 50 new ships per month if we maximize our industrial capacity and recruit experienced crews from rebel species who have joined our alliance. The Galactic Defense Alliance had grown from humanity's desperate resistance into a confederation of free species united by their opposition to Imperial tyranny. Each member contributed unique technologies and capabilities that strengthened the Alliance's ability to defend against Zephyrian aggression. Admiral Jake Harrison commanded the Alliance flagship USS Liberty as it patrolled space that had once been the exclusive domain of the Galactic Empire. His crew now included officers from 12 different species, all working together to protect freedom throughout known space. The bridge that had once been purely human now buzzed with alien languages and diverse perspectives. Navigator Lisa Murphy worked alongside a Corvani flight specialist, whose people had been enslaved by the Empire for 800 years. Chief Engineer Carlos Rivera supervised maintenance, teams that included Altarian technicians whose crystalline biology gave them unique insights into energy. Systems. Communications Officer Amy Foster coordinated with Alliance vessels using translation protocols, developed through cooperation between human and alien scientists. The communication networks that connected dozens of species represented one of the Alliance's greatest achievements. High Admiral Kethmore made one final attempt to restore Imperial authority by assembling the largest fleet in galactic history for a decisive assault on Earth and the Alliance capital. 1,500 ships representing the Empire's remaining military strength prepared for what everyone understood would be the final battle between tyranny and freedom. However, the fleet never reached human space because rebellions erupted simultaneously. On over 100 Imperial worlds as enslaved species coordinated their resistance, using communication networks established by the Galactic Defense Alliance. The Empire found itself fighting for survival on multiple fronts while Alliance forces provided weapons and tactical support to rebel movements. The final Imperial defeat came not through military conquest but through the collapse of an economic and political system based on slavery and oppression. Subject species throughout the galaxy simply refused to continue supporting their oppressors, and the Empire crumbled from within as its foundation of fear and intimidation dissolved. High Admiral Kethmore fled Thrice Prime with a handful of loyal ships while former Imperial territory was liberated by Alliance forces and local resistance movements. The Zephyrian leader who had once commanded 10,000 star systems found himself in exile, commanding less than 50 vessels and facing charges of genocide and crimes against sentient beings. The new galactic government established its headquarters on Earth, where representatives from over 300 species worked together to create laws and institutions based on cooperation rather than domination. The Constitution of the Galactic Defense Alliance guaranteed freedom and self-determination for all member species while providing collective security against future threats. Admiral Harrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty 5 years after first detecting unknown energy signatures in the Delta 7 system. The ship that had begun as a simple patrol vessel now served as the flagship of the largest peaceful confederation in galactic history. His crew represented the best qualities of dozens of different species working together toward common goals. Admiral, we are receiving a priority transmission from Alliance headquarters. Amy Foster reported from her communication station. The message contained news that the last Imperial holdouts had surrendered and agreed to accept Alliance authority in exchange for protection from rebel groups seeking revenge for centuries of oppression. The Galactic Empire that had ruled through fear and violence for 10,000 years had finally ended. Jake Harrison looked out at the stars that now represented hope and freedom for billions of sentient beings throughout the galaxy. Humanity had started as 12 ships facing impossible odds but had shown that courage and determination could overcome any obstacle. More importantly, they had proven that cooperation was stronger than domination and that freedom was worth any sacrifice. Dr. Helen Carter worked with xenobiologists from dozens of species to establish protocols for peaceful first contact with newly discovered civilizations. The Alliance was committed to exploration and scientific advancement rather than conquest and exploitation. The final scene showed children from many different species playing together in parks on Alliance worlds while their parents worked to build a better future for all sentient life. The galaxy had learned that diversity was strength, and that freedom belonged to everyone regardless of their species or origin. High Admiral Kethmore watched from his exile ship as former Imperial worlds celebrated their liberation and joined the growing alliance of free peoples. He finally understood that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology or tactics, but their absolute refusal to accept that freedom was impossible. In trying to crush the human spirit, the Empire had awakened something that would forever change the galaxy and give hope to all who suffered under tyranny.